All right, another Meta Performance podcast, and we're going to go with an OG today. But first of all, how's it going, Coach Michael?
It's going well. Glad to be on. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I am too. I will say, and we'll get John. How's it going?
Great. Good. Thanks for having me on.
This is a true conversion of two streams of how small the triathlon world is. And we didn't know till we booked this. So before we get in there, I'll tell people, I put into the list, we usually are like, hey, who do you know that would be a super cool guest, and like book them on and then figure out who's going. I drop it into the list and I get a note from Michael that's like, I took it the wrong way, to be honest, at first. It was like, you're having John Hirsch on? And I was like, is that okay? Yeah. And so we were like, I'm like, well, you know him, because I go back to like the OG Ironman Lake Placid days. He's like, he stayed at my house. I'm like, how did we not get him on the list prior? And how did it not come up? So we were like, that is so crazy and crazier. I don't know if you know, John, for a while, I met Michael when I lived in Louisville. So I just happened to move before they started Ironman Louisville. And so it just all didn't converge, but total small world thing. And I don't know what it says about you that my first gut reaction was like, oh crap. He's worried.
I was just thinking, don't try to out John Hirsch me.
Yeah.
Don't you dare.
Let's stop. Yes. So give us the reason we're both so excited. Go back and give us your history in the sport. And then I also want just to give context to people what you do for your day job, because that to me is very, well, I would say interesting that you're doing it, not that I'm doing it.
Sure. So my day job is that I'm a public defender in the Bronx. I'm a senior trial lawyer, so I handle, at this point, everything. Actually, I'm homicide certified now. So I've worked on every single type of criminal case, pretty much handle the most serious ones at this point, given my longevity in the office. So I'm a public defender. I am the lawyer you get if you cannot afford an attorney. I am the embodiment of the Sixth Amendment from 9 a.m. to 5. And because we have night court, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. sometimes, which we can talk about what that's like trying to train. But then my longevity in the sport, I did my first Ironman in 99, which now seems really long ago. I qualified for Kona in 2002, turned professional pretty quickly thereafter because I was a public defender, and the only way I could stay in the sport was to be a professional. There was no way I was going to have the disposable income of as a public defender to continue in triathlon. So it was either turn professional or take up something much more affordable. So I turned professional shortly after Kona. And finished in the top half in 2005 at Ironman Florida. That was kind of my, I can kind of do this. And then while staying in the basement of the Silers, had my biggest result of my career, which was a 2008 Ironman Louisville top 10. And that was when it was like, a lot of things kind of clicked after that. And my coaching business kind of started doing well, and also got some really great sponsorship opportunities with a great charity up here called Team Continuum, which is still around and does spots for the major marathons as well as the New York City Half Marathon. And then had a couple more top 10s along the way. And then took a little sabbatical from Ironman to do Spartan racing, which at the time was an emerging sport. And I was kind of in my 40s at that point. So I thought I would try some of their events, which short answer is I actually really enjoyed doing them. Ended up with a couple of master elite world titles and top 5s in their ultra distance race, which was like 30 to 35 miles. Yeah. And, had a lot of fun races along the way. A couple trips to the ITU World Championships as a pro, and a trip to the 70.3 World Championships as a pro. I think that's and then, and actually got to do Norseman and qualified for the extreme triathlons, their half, which they call the solo 0.5, with a top 10 finish at Canada Man at the age of 49. That was and then I was going to race their world championships, at the, with I don't know if they call it a lead or open or whatever their words are, at 50. But thankfully, the birth of my daughter was about a month before that, and there was just no way I was going to do it. And then but I did turn 50 and do a 7-hour snowshoe race and took second. So I guess I'm still getting some workouts in here and there.
Some workouts. It is mind blowing. For me, the longevity at that level. So like, I will say I've been doing it longer, just not as fast. And my triathlon pro career was only a couple years. To your point, I was at that, like, I didn't have the gifts, but when I say I raced pro, there was one of the 3 years that I netted more money than my expenses. And when I mean netted more money, out of pride, I netted more money. It was not significant. And so it's an interesting to hear you say that going back, that was like, I had to go kind of all in. It's the only way I could play the game.
Yeah. I mean, as little as being a mid-tier fringe sport athlete is, public defenders make actually less. I literally was, at times it was, I actually went part-time as a public defender for a while because I couldn't afford to be a full-time public defender. Being a, mid-level fringe sport athlete was actually, a better deal.
Wow.
Yeah. It says a lot about,
before we really dive in. Yeah, I know. Well, if you cannot afford one, you're going to get the best, what we have is kind of the Miranda, right? So the speed round, really quick. Are you, with all of this, a coffee or tea, and a and a 1-year-old? Are you a coffee or tea person?
Oh, definitely coffee. And plug, AeroPress Coffee Roasters makes Evil Racing Cult coffee, which is my special blend created by me, and I drink it exclusively for all my training and racing.
Okay, we'll have to come back to that for the racing part.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you a mirrored or clear goggles?
Oh, I'm clear. I'm definitely. I mean, I will occasionally go mirrored, but almost 9 times out of 10, if it's for the money, I'm going clear.
You if you have a weekend away, which may never happen for the next 17 or 18 years, by the way, since you're on the opposite spectrum of Michael and I. Do you want a posh weekend away, or are we camping?
Oh, I love nature, but no, I need a bed and hot water. I'm very soft. I did enough sleeping on the floor when I was a hardcore singer before getting into triathlon, and sleeping in terrible cars and stuff like that. I'm good. I want a bed.
Kind of 2 parts, or you can just answer one. Favorite race you've done, and race you wish you would have done.
Oh, I think about this one a lot. So I know the races I wish I had done, and the top 2 are I wish I had done Roth, and I wish I had done Zofingen. Powerman Zofingen, the Epic Duathlon in Switzerland. Those are the 2 races that, like, I really kick myself. Cedar Summit also, like, I wish I had done that which is a small race in New Hampshire, but unfortunately, that's
still going,
distant here.
By the way.
Yeah, it's still going on.
But
yeah, I wish in my,
as long as you stay out. I'll go up there with you as long as you stay out of my age group.
Fair enough. Favorite race I did. Oh man, I mean, you can't hate on Kona. It's just it's the one monument we have in our sport. It's the one with the history. It's the one with the magic. I won't, I don't love the WTC in a lot of ways as a person who worked with them professionally, but man, it's hard to not say Kona. I also would say Lake Placid would be on my short list. Wildflower was amazing experience. And I think, though, and this isn't really an ongoing race, but one favorite race was the ITU World Championships in Victoria, Spain. The long course World Championships I did in 2012 in Victoria, Spain. That was my favorite.
You didn't have Norseman in there, because I always answer Swissman. Swissman. So I did Swissman, and the weather wasn't great, but the days before it and after were great, of course. But that's always on my list. And when I talk about Kona, I talk about it as it's the feel more than the race. And I probably have a very different perspective of it, because you were racing probably in a similar neighborhood that you normally race in the races. For those of us that are bubble athletes, you go from being in the front part of a race, bubble being like, the last qualifying spots, to, being near the front half of the race and seeing everybody, to watching everybody from the back of the bus, because it is a pile of fast athletes. And so that always reminds me, that probably knocks it down a peg for me. But you're right, the feel around that week, there's not another event like that, I don't think.
I actually want to put Norseman on that list. Norseman was a spiritual experience. I almost forgot that it doesn't register in my brain as a race. It registers as a religious experience. So it's hard to,
That's what I told myself as I started up the second large climb over Switzerland. This is an experience, not a race. I sold myself earlier on that part. And then the last one, I always want to know, are you a crunchy or creamy peanut butter person?
Crunchy. That's not up for debate.
Well, it's up for debate. It's a very divisive subject, not debate for you. But
no, I just assumed everybody who buys smooth peanut butter only does it because the store ran out of crunchy and they had to. I thought that's the entire point of smooth peanut butter.
No,
it's an interesting theory.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory.
Interesting. So people come on this show and say smooth?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. So I asked that question in like my professional world a lot and on here. About 2/3 of the people to 3/4 are smooth or creamy. About 1/3 are crunchy. Usually the answer comes very quick. You don't get a lot of like the answer. The only place I ever was doing something professionally and it was the majority crunchy, and take it for what it was worth, it was Colorado.
Well,
so all the crunchy people, I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's like so on brand. I'm like, I didn't even know what to do with the answer. I'm like, that's so on brand. So just letting it start as we go with the conversation, and you may, because you stayed at Michael's house, Michael can come in with any stories, of course. I'm really curious.
I've got a list.
Yeah, if you had like the secret, like what's the secrets or the things you do, or when you coach athletes as well, the longevity to me, I'll just keep coming back to it. Whenever I've spoken to you, which is off and on through the years, you're always like positive, you're doing well, I see you posting, and you've got this job, which I don't think most people would put probably on the list of happiest people jobs. It's great you do it. How do you stay positive over time, and how have you stayed so physically durable?
So durability they're somewhat related, actually, the answer, which is I come from that old school 90s mentality of peaking once or twice and peaking really hard and then taking a break. I took really meaningful off seasons, and it allowed me to also change focuses. So I would, after like Louisville, I would take 6 weeks and just focus on being a lawyer and being a person and not, I'd work out very lightly or for fun, but I really got away from the sport. And I think that allowed my body to heal and allowed me to really, to try to fend off burnout, which is why my career was as long as it was. The other thing I do as a coach and an athlete is, especially for long course stuff, anybody doing ultra distance stuff, ultra distance running, even marathons, and also certainly Ironman and even 70.3s. I have a simple equation, which is the more you make it a workout fun, the more workouts you're going to do, which increases the volume, and the more volume you do for most people, the better you do. So it all starts for me with making it as fun as possible. So whether that's going to Andalusia, Spain with a bunch of people that I coach at stronglikebull.org. If anybody wants to sign up, we have a few spots left for next year. A camp I've been doing for 20 years, whether that's trail running versus mindless track workouts, you can get it. Is it going to be the perfect workout? Maybe not. Is it going to be better than the workout you don't do because you quit the sport and put your bike up on eBay because you're so disgusted with it? Yeah, absolutely. So I go trail running. I'll do an entire month where I mostly use my mountain bike. And I mean, not just now. I mean, now I definitely do it. But like, even at the height of my career, I would do December, January was almost entirely cyclocross racing and cyclocross riding. Just really keep it fun. Fun equal, because if something's fun, you might do 2 cyclocross races and ride, before you're on your cyclocross bike, which is really novel and cool. So now you're doing an hour of riding, an hour race, an hour of riding, an hour race, and then like a cool down. The next thing you know, you did 4 hours with 2 really great hours of essentially intervals in the middle of, December. That kind of stuff I found to be really important for, so yeah, mind your head. as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the big thing I always noticed, with you, John, was just the diversity
Yeah.
that you took. I mean, you would hop into road races, you'd hop into, the random running races. And so what I'm hearing is a lot of that was just to keep it fun, while still it's almost like sneaking a workout in on yourself because you're just out having fun. But do you also get a sense of that diversity just from a getting back to the durability question, just allowed you to have more sustainable performance versus, somebody that just runs and gets repetitive use injuries and so forth? Do you think that was a part of that as well?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, one of my strong beliefs is that because I did 90% of my running on soft surfaces and trails and whatnot, I think it really led to me not getting a
Right.
lot of injuries. I truly believe that. I did so much trail running versus road running and track workouts that I saved any road running for right before a race just to build up some durability, and that was it. So yeah, and I would jump into a
Mm.
ton of trail racing, which I thought was, again, really high efforts but really low impact. Not to mention all that you work, like you said, you work all these stability muscles. You're going laterally. It just, I think it really really helped. Yeah, for building better leg muscles, but also not beating them up as much with like you would with road running.
It's interesting you say that, all of that, because one, I usually joke, like if you can always go find not fun at work. Like that's, there's always an option to go find not fun. Um, I think a lot of the programs today, because you see people come into the sport and leave. I think one, there's way more options, right, to go do stuff. But they get so dialed into this is the workout this week, and like if someone's like, "Hey, we're gonna go ride," they're like, "I can't." Or it's supposed to be Saturday, and I knew you guys are going Sunday, and that's a whatever. Or like I have 20 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this, 8 minutes of this, and you guys are just gonna go ride. Um, I see less people doing that are younger because they get tied to that plan so hardcore, and then it becomes a task. And they do miss out on some of that stuff because, I always tell people group rides are great. One, they can either police yourself and go slow, or B, what do you call more than two bikes? It's a race. And so there's always a little bit of pushing going on, right? But I agree with you. Like, and I am a big believer in the trail and dirt roads. The trails for sure, I think, mentally, because you can't think about a lot of other life stuff too on the trails, or you just fall on your face. Same, mountain biking for sure for me because I suck at it. But well, just I can't. I'm so bad at it. I just feel bad. But I agree, like John, that like checking out thing and keeping it fun. I don't know anyone who's diversified as much as you either. Like every time you look around, you're doing this race or that race. I didn't have
Mhm.
the confidence to go jump in like hardcore cyclocross races. Probably
Oh
my
yeah.
biggest regret, Michael, from Louisville,
Mhm.
lacrosse.
Oh yeah. You were in the
Love
cross
me some
capital of the
cyclocross.
country. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. I'd go train with those guys, but then I'm like, yeah. I think my just my ego got in the way a little bit because I'm like, I'm a rider, I'm a decent triathlete. I'm gonna go finish last, like really finish last, and like I don't want to get lapped because they're so good there.
Yeah.
But you're right, like that stuff is what keeps you around a long time, and like the distances you've done, the types of stuff you've done. How do you, other than making it fun, how did you sit down at the end of one year and then decide like this year I'm going short, this year I'm going long, this year I'm going to do some of this? Like, how did you make those decisions?
Oh, I never decided to go short. I didn't have pro talent for short course. This was actually a very easy decision for me. It was what Ironman am I doing? I was only good enough I only had pro talent for Ironman. I really wasn't a legitimate Olympic distance pro, or even really once the Olympics kind of got really rolling, and those guys came over from the Olympic distance into the 70.3, they pushed us all out. I literally just figured out which one or two Ironmans
Mm.
I was going to focus on, and then, um, and then just, I put all my chips in for that race. That was basically, I did local stuff. I did fun, weird stuff. There's the Blockhound Triathlon where you do 4.5 miles of beach running, or, which is a great event. Or there's a local triathlon series near me that's off road, but it's easier. It's kind of not, it's kind of a, more beginner mountain bike course. So I would do that, or I would do local triathlons, or the occasional 70.3 like Wildflower, just because it was awesome. But I always went to those races knowing I wasn't going to beat. I wasn't going to be in the money.
So how did you mix
how did
all
I
this
pick it?
other?
Usually it was, I had tried to have different goals. Louisville I picked because they weren't doing the Kona Point Series yet. So I thought I had a real shot at getting the Kona spot as a pro, which was kind of a big goal for me. I never achieved it, but some of those spots would roll down, and it was so close back then. It was in the height of the summer, which of course is when you would want to race in Louisville.
100%.
100%, yeah. Except for the year you did it and ruined it for everybody with some sort of weird devil magic to get it to be 70 degrees and not humid.
At the marathon, I mean, it was 55 or 60 at the start of the race, and after
that
was
ruined my whole
09.
race.
And
the whole point of that race was that people would blow up, and I would march through the run field and catch people. And then on that day, everyone felt good, and I found myself really, really far behind. So yeah, I don't know if you know this. We haven't talked about it since then, but I essentially blame you for ruining my entire 2009 season. Yeah.
I'll
I mean,
accept
while
that.
we're just having, while we're catching up.
Yes. Yeah, I get a text from John like after 09, and it was just like, you should never do another triathlon. You will never get weather like that again. Just quit.
It's true.
Especially Louisville, Louisville just should be like, you just stamp it on there. Like, odds of it being below 80 and humid are ridiculous, let alone, in the afternoon. Like, even the, the mini or whatever it is, the half marathon and marathon they have in April. I mean, at the end it's going to be warm. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's a good shot it's going to be pretty toasty for sure.
Yeah. I'll never get that one back. But anyways, so I would just look at, that it was that kind of stuff. I did Placid a bunch of years because I got a lot of pop locally, like I'm in the Northeast. So it really, I could go and bring my whole crew of athletes up there and, kind of make a lot of local noise, which was really critical for my, I mean, I hate to say it, but kind of like my branding or my brand, right? Also, I didn't have to pay to go there, like in terms of travel. It was a tank of gas, which was also a pretty huge, perk. Or a couple of years, I did the Rev 3 races back when those were huge events with prize money. Because, and when Challenge came over, I was always trying to, those kind of emerging race companies were always really good to pros. And, to the degree that being a professional triathlete is a business, they were really great people to do business with. So, I did Atlantic City. I think I was 11th. I did Rev 3 Cedar Point. I think I was 11th, which is frustrating because both those races paid 10 deep. But yeah, so a lot of times I would do those races too, because they were just great races to focus on and kind of people to work with. And and it was nice to avoid Ironman.
Yeah. What you kind of referenced it with your community of athletes, but I think that's one of the things that I remember 2013 when I think that was 2013, the whole crew was in town. I mean, we had Phil.
That was great.
I pulled up a picture the other day to prove to Sean that I actually knew you. And we were all in our kitchen having dinner.
Amazing.
But what's the role of community for you as you think about being a coach, but also being an athlete, and how important is it to you?
I realized early on that triathlon in general, right? It fills this enormous social void in America, and a void that's getting worse as we get more technologically wired and more, do more things on Zoom and less in person. And sports, people are going to churches less. People are working more hours and spending less time. The bowling leagues of the unions have all vanished, right? This is a time of unparalleled radical individualism, and I don't mean that in a good way. So triathlon brings people together around something that also usually mirrors other core values: being outside, being physically active, pushing yourself, challenging yourself. These are all things that, that you create these affinity groups around a sport. And so there's just a natural kindredness to it. I used a little bit of my punk rock, hardcore music days, kind of vibes to self-select people that I thought that would usually I'd be drawn to normally, and just kind of put that out there. But first, in the heyday of blogging, But then later in what I think was the best days of Twitter, and then eventually it moved over to the gram. But, it was always kind of bringing people together who were the people I would have hung out with if we were at a punk show or a hardcore show, before I got into sports. And so it created a really cool group of people that I think created genuine friendships. Most of them continue to transcend the sport. And I'm friends with people now, who are, who I coach, but also, want to hang out with and will be lifelong friends with. So I think it's really great because I think we all, on some very human level, crave that kind of connection to each other. And this is just the catalyst for that. And my camps really become the focal point of that. It's now in its 20th year. And it's amazing how many people have done almost all 20 years of it, or repeatedly, they skip a year and come back. It's because the idea of getting together and sitting, we all sit in this like living room it's actually 2 living rooms that we are able to remove the wall from. 20 people hanging out, joking about the ride they just did that took them over 3 mountains, and the silliness that ensued, and all of that is just, I don't want to sound overly sentimental, but it's almost sacred. We've been doing it now for 2 decades, and you see how much it means to people. It's, I don't even need it anymore as an athlete, because it's far beyond the training that I would need to do at my age or with my goals. But I'm now this steward along with my co-founder, Sean, and we just feel obligated to keep it going because it has so much value to people. No monetary value. We run it for almost nothing. We never profit out of it. But it's this, but it's this wonderful experience, and it's really important to people. And I just think you can't underestimate how much fun it is and how important that fun is to put 20 people around a dinner table at the end of a hard training day and have them just sit with each other and joke and laugh. And sometimes it does get like, I came down one night or one morning. I'm the first person to up in the morning because I set out the Evil Racing Cult coffee, available by AeroPress Roasters. I've set out the Evil Racing Cult coffee for everybody. I set up the coffee machines and I put out breakfast or whatever. And there were like 4 guys that had been up all night, like dealing with, some trauma that they had in their lives, and they had stayed up all night chatting it out. And I was like, man, this is beautiful. So yeah, I somewhere along the line, we have to kind of bring people together, and it doesn't matter. The catalyst doesn't matter, right? We could do, we're going around in circles in our underwear. It's completely ridiculous, right? Big circles, but circles nonetheless, right? And Lycra is just absurd. It doesn't matter the thing. It could be bowling. It could be history reenactment. It literally doesn't matter, but anything that brings people together is important. And it just so happens to be our thing is swimming, biking, and running.
Bonds are really weird because I think, John, where we met was on the Blue page. We should date ourselves, right? Where it was just a forum for Lake Placid. The page was blue and like Florida was orange.
So that's way back.
That's where I met you, right? So, and that group would meet out in the Berkshires and ride, and there'd be these rides, and that group would then hang out, and that is still actually why I moved back to the Berkshires. Is one reason. Some of the people.
Did you do the Placid weekend? Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Did you do the Placid weekend where that blue page all went up to Placid, the V&V? Yeah. We were there. I was there.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah. So like you go up, and that camaraderie still, what is now going to make me feel old, almost 30 years old, right? Literally getting on 30 years, like that group still, you can reach out and talk to people, and so that is a thing. And that is, John, what I fear. Everyone has these super individualized, and not to knock on, like they're great, because if they get people to do it, TriDot, Human Go, whatever pile of them that are there, they're very, this is your thing and you don't get your dots. Whereas when I coach, I'm probably like you, John. If they're like, this group's riding, I'm like, go. Like, I don't know, I'll deal. Like, we'll just adjust, but like, go have fun. The whole point is to have fun. Like, I don't know why, if you're chasing a slot or whatever, you make some decisions, but you're right, John. Generally, if they have fun, they're just, that ends up being an additive session that they don't even realize. Now that I'll say this out loud, maybe they might. But, they don't even realize you just dropped them an extra 3 hours of, base miles, and whatever by going with a group ride. And they still do their other stuff, but they had fun. And then they want to go back and do the next ride. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I love that approach of making it fun. But I think the community thing, I have to tell this story. So back in leading up to '08, when John stayed with us, we knew the person that handled setting up homestays for the pros. And so I guess there was some sort of questionnaire you had to complete, basically, here's who I am, blah, blah, a little bit about yourself. And we got a first few, and it was, I'll say it since I don't consider myself truly a triathlete, but it was your typical, I need complete silence, no kids. I have all these food allergies. I need to be lights out in bed by 8:00. And we were like, nope. Then we get this one. My name is John. I was in a hardcore punk band for this many years. I was a goalie. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. I played goalie, in college in soccer. I was like, check, me too. I forget what else was in there, but we were like, this is our guy. This is our guy. And came and stayed with us. It was, for me, not having done an Ironman, that was our first homestay as well. To be part of that experience literally was magical, just to see. I think it helped that it was exciting that you finished top 10, but just to see and feel that experience through you was so cool. I was like inspired and was like, let's do one of them.
Let's ruin John's next year. Yeah.
Ruin the next year. Well, he did give me some advice because our kids were real young. And we were talking, I think the next day, and I was like, oh, I think I want to do an Ironman now. And he's like, dude, wait till your kid's a little bit older. I was like, it was good advice. And then about 6 months later, he leaves a voicemail. Hey, I got you in. He had gotten some comped entry for it. He's like, I'll see you on 4th Street. Click.
You're doing the radio edit version of.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I actually said?
Yes, I do know exactly what you. There was an M and an F pushed them together,
and a lot of enthusiasm on my part.
A whole lot. Like there was no backing out. I was like, I'm in.
And the best part is you hadn't decided to do it. You had asked me if you thought that I might be able to pull some strings to get you in. To which point I just went ahead and signed you up and then left you that voicemail.
Yeah. See you on 4th Street.
See you on 4th Street.
But
yeah.
Another funny story, because I had to share this, was so daughter Kate, since 2008, we've always called her Kate Monster, and that's because of John. We were so 2008, Kate would have been 6.
Oh, I remember this. I hope you're telling
Marsh
me the story.
and I are in the kitchen, and we hear like this screaming, not like blood-curdling screaming, but just like back and forth screaming, as if two people are trying to outdo each other. And Marsh and I are like, what in the heck is going on? And I go, I'll check it out. Go outside. It's John and Kate, 6-year-old Kate, out there just screaming. John's relying on his punk hardcore screaming. Kate's just being 6. And he called her Kate Monster that whole weekend. And she was Kate Monster, still is, rest of her life, because of John Hirsch.
Oh, dude. I think about that story all the time. I mean, for 2 reasons. One is that, Kate's gone on to have an amazing pro career as a cyclist. So the fact that like, you have no idea how many times I pull out my phone when I see something, pop up, and I'm like, I know this person. And then I tell that exact story, which, by the way, is the following. I'm sitting on your front porch in Louisville, and this 6-year-old with, I believe, a cast on. She had broken her arm in a zipline accident.
That was fairly normal for her.
Yeah. Comes running up to me, says nothing, and just starts screaming in my face. Like, ah! And I'm like, this is like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know exactly how to handle this, because like, it's going to seem weird if this person's just screaming at me. So I'm like, I should probably scream back. And at which point we're just screaming at each other. And, like obviously in retrospect, we were obviously 2 subspecies communicating in our own language. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that Kate was recognizing that I was a pro, and that in her was a 6-year-old version of a pro endurance sport athlete, but we just started screaming at each other. Yeah. It was amazing. Yeah. I'm obviously a huge fan. I obviously didn't catch a lot of the data points along the way, but it's, yeah. I didn't realize that I was the one who coined the term Cape Monster, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That is a footnote that I didn't know. I always knew her as Cape Monster, but did not know that I'm the one who started that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
started that weekend.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's an interesting point because, we did homestays after Holly, who's, my partner in Meta, was a homestay with us. And then we had, during cyclocross, we'd had like people like Danny Summerhill stay at our house, Chloe Diger. And so for Kate, for her, she saw that, like, that's a thing, like that's something you can go do. Mm-hmm. And I think just the opening up of your mind of the world of possibility, that, oh, wow, people do that. Oh, okay, cool. That's something that's on a list of things I could be when I grow up. So I do think it did shape a bit of who she was to be around people like you that were, showing, how you could go and be an endurance athlete and compete at the highest level.
I think the big piece of that too is that they're normal, they're humans, right? Like I think at some point, like there's that, they're a pro athlete. You're like, well, like I knew John is the other dude screaming at me on the porch. Like, that's, like that's,
well, let's be clear. It was screaming with.
Yeah.
Wasn't screaming at.
It was. But yeah, if you ask Kate about that weekend, I mean, she probably doesn't remember it, but the things she would equally remember is crunch cakes and dancing on the carpet. I got Marcia a press pass, which she immediately decided included the entire family. And after I crossed the finish line,
that's what you do. You just act like you know where you're going.
Yeah, me and your two kids were just hanging out at the finish line, and it's, you know this, Sean, when you finish early, the gaps are big. And it's kind of a magical thing that only the top people get to experience. But you get a little bit of time to yourself at the finish line. It's just kind of you time. And they give you it because, one, they have like filler, right? They're happy to have you out there. But two, there's no problem. It's not a stream of people yet. So I literally got to, one, cry like a baby. Because it was like a whole decade worth of energy and frustration and work that had come to fruition at that moment of my first top 10, my first Ironman payday, the sense that I had finally really made it. And then second, it was like me and the Seiler family hanging out at the finish line of Ironman Louisville. It was awesome. Yeah. There's a poster that got made for the Rev 3 races. I'm wearing this logo, but and it's a photo Marcia took, and it's still up. I see that photo because
awesome.
I see that photo on a poster at a shop every time I go back home, and I have a copy of it. I have a second one that is up in my my bike vault. So yeah, I think about that. I think about that moment all the time. I think you can actually, if you look really closely, you can see Marcia in my mirror sunglasses.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me when you talk about setting goals and people set goals, I feel like people are either like, I'm doing nothing or I have to finish at the top. And it's interesting to hear you talk about like how emotional it was to be in the top 10. Like the podium was probably like those guys were, thinking about showering, right? And it's like, and you're getting there and how emotional you are because of the goal that you set off, which isn't probably what other people think, right? You're like, I'm there to win. You're like, no, winning is top 10 here, and meeting that goal, that was your goal, and how emotional it could be because you're invested. I think that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Chris McDonald took second that race and rudely went and did Ironman Wisconsin 7 days later. Like he literally showered, packed up his bike into a car and drove to Wisconsin for the next one. But for me, it took an entire lifetime to achieve, essentially that. And I think anybody who's serious about finding out where their limits are has to kind of accept that you may dedicate your whole life to getting a few top 10 results. And, can you live with that?
The first Kona, the spot I got was actually at Lubbock. So this is how old I am and a half. And I didn't think I was capable. I had stayed short course, and I knew, because you had the spot breakdown. Remember, everyone used to start races at the same time. And, I had a friend counting where you were. And, what an idiot I probably was, half breaking down at the end. And people are like, he's like, what's he doing? Because you're in that like, you're nowhere near the front. Like, why is he, is he upset? And I'm like, so fired up. Like, cause that was the goal. Right. And it was like, I can't believe I made this goal that no one else really kind of knows, but you set that based on your stuff, which I think is really important. Then you probably, I assume, that's part of setting their goals with your athletes as you go through the year. Like, what is achievable and what does success look like? And let's work back from there so that when you achieve it, you're happy, not, I could have been something else.
Yeah. If for the perspective that you're giving, I always get to keep it because I coach a charity team that, for the New York City Marathon and the other marathons. And you see people who never thought of themselves as athletic, but now get to count themselves as an athlete because they finished a marathon, which was something that it's a transformative experience in their life. And I would say that that's just as profound as being on a podium of an Ironman. It's, for that individual. And I think that's so yeah, I agree with you. It's an individual journey in that sense. And
I actually think I take more joy in others doing well, but I actually think it's probably more profound for them because those of us, like I've been I wasn't a soccer goalie because that's just dumb. Nobody should do that.
Well, you have to be a little touched.
Yeah, I know. So, but I was an athlete all through. And so it was always like, what's the goal? I'm going to set the goal I'm going to try to achieve. And like, that's just been a thing forever. Where what you're talking about, John, like I coached someone last year that never did anything athletic and a sprint triathlon was out of bounds. And I'm like, we can do it. And watching them make that journey, like to your point, like I can't do a marathon because they weren't an athlete. Like that is a huge transformation. For those of us that have been athletes our whole life, it's like to your point, I'm going to point it at this and I'll have some level of success or not, but whatever. Like it's daunting for them. So it is, I think, cool to see that.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
As we kind of get near the end, if you had to give some advice to someone in their, either getting started or 20s, 30s, like I know you talked about have fun. Are there any other key kind of points to keeping them? We didn't dwell a lot on this kind of blending and being happy with your work and sports goals. Cause your work is, we didn't get into it a ton, but I know, as a public defender, you have crazy days and I guess some nights, right?
Yeah. The nights were devastating.
The night court, I think about the old show Night Court, by the way. I don't know.
That's real. The night court, just so you know, is there's in the Manhattan. We have all 5 boroughs here, but in Manhattan, there's actually 2 night courts. There's the one that does a mix of serious stuff and other stuff, misdemeanors and felonies. And then we have one that's entirely misdemeanors. And it's just the silly, ridiculous stuff like the TV show that you see coming through. They even have like the wacky bailiff, like it really is like, yeah. Do you guys know what SantaCon is? Is that a national known thing?
Oh, I can only imagine
people dressed up as Santa. Like if you work like that courtroom the day after SantaCon, it's, all these guys in like, hungover in Santa outfits who just did ridiculous stuff. It really is. I mean, it's pretty, there is some comic relief along the way, but no, it's, to the degree that people, I always struggle with this, right? Because there's a book that just came out called Work Won't Love You Back. And it's, about rethinking how your relationship to your job and to what degree you allow it to be your identity versus, of course, like having a job like a professional triathlete or a public defender where you care passionately and deeply about what you do and you pour yourself into it. And I don't know if I can give people advice on which path is ultimately provides more balance or is more rewarding. Core values of how much money's worth to you is something that I also think is something everyone has to decide for themselves. For me, being waking up every day and being passionate about what I did was far more important than, being more financially successful. On the other hand, I also, on some level, am in my parents' child, and they're fantastic capitalists, and I found a way to make it work and to, make the money side, sustainable. So, I mean, I had the only mediocre hardcore band that could actually turn a profit. So, if I can make, so in some ways I'm just kind of lucky that way. But anyways, I will say this though. After that one of those Louisville races, 48 hours later, I was in night court with my feet propped up on the wall of a holding cell because they were so swollen that I had to drain physically and manually drain the fluid and damage out of them after Ironman Louisville. It was due Louisville. stick around for the roll down on Sunday, fly back Monday. But I think Monday or Tuesday night, I was in night court working 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. to bank those comp shifts that I would later use for full-time training days. It was a real grind, for sure. But there are also, I did go part-time after that race in Louisville. That was the catalyst for me getting enough support to be able to be a part-time lawyer, which really also both gave me more time to train, but also I really loved the lifestyle of doing something very hard, but not doing it full-time. I think that was a huge middle path for me. And I don't see that as much. I remember the guy who won Ironman Canada. Sean, you might remember his name. He was a dentist. And because he had his own practice, he won Ironman Canada a couple of times. He was Canadian. And he focused on that race. He won in like 2000 to 2002, I remember, somewhere in that range. The internet could tell us. But anyways, he said he actually really loved having a part-time dental practice, that it gave him that kind of balance. So I think there are careers out there that you can do a little bit scaled back that allow you to have a little bit of financial security, and stability, but also allow you to chase these other dreams. Anybody who's ever seen the movie Surfwise knows that there's that, the version of the idiosyncratic doctor who picks up ER shifts here and there, and then, the rest of the time is surfing. I have a friend of mine who's doing that with a goth band. His passion is to be the drummer of a goth band, and when they're not on tour, he just picks up ER shifts, and it's he loves it. So I think people need to think creatively about their life. I got really lucky, and shout out to my coach, Jim Ortel, of the Block On Sports Shop. He sat me down on his deck, and he didn't ask me like what I wanted my FTP to be. He's like, where do you want to be in 10 years? And this was, at the very beginning of my pro career. And, we kind of mapped out my life, and it wasn't about training. It was about sorting out the big picture questions and trying to find a path that worked. And I think people don't have that mentorship or access to that mentorship as much as they should. Because if you do that, you're going to ask yourself some really valuable questions. Like, what are the things that really matter? And he asked me, what are your core beliefs? And as we went through, I realized that I wanted to be a public defender, but I also didn't want to do it full time. And we kind of figured out the path to doing that. And that was really profound. And then we jokingly referred to, at some point I was like, hey, yo, man, we got to talk. I'm on year 17 of a 10-year plan, because I liked it so much. I just kind of stuck around and kept, finding new ways to invent myself and to continue racing. Right. But again, that was something that I saw someone else do. Anybody who knows mountain biking knows, and then Xterra knows Ned Overend, right? Like,
oh, man,
that guy just kept finding first he was the best mountain biker. Then, as he got older, he transitioned to being the best Xterra athlete. And then in his 50s, he won the Fat Tire National Championship. Like, he just kept finding ways to, so yeah, I did Ironmans. Then when Ironman didn't work, I did, kind of not, more extreme races like Norseman and Canada Man. And then, then I moved to, and I did Spartan races. And it was because I just kept finding opportunities to continue to do what I love. And those, if you're willing to be a little bit flexible and try new stuff, those opportunities will present themselves.
Yeah.
So,
John's also very good. I mean, you should also know that if you need tattoo advice, John's your guy.
You owe me for that. I saved your life.
You did save my life. So I do 2009. I'm like, hey, I want to commemorate this with a tattoo. Didn't want an M dot. It's like, they don't. So I designed this whole thing, and I'm like, I'm going to run this by John. And he's like, dude, don't do that. If you get that tattoo, you're going to get beat up. And I was like, it's that bad, huh? He's like, it's that bad. He's like, I think I just saved your life.
It's true. That's
so thanks to John. You are here today for the episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
otherwise you wouldn't have been here. So I'll wrap up and just say thanks. We will try to tag all the stuff. So your camp, your coffee. I definitely am going to ask you later for the book, because actually I preach that a lot, like the work-life balance and your identity. You see it a lot in corporate. So I'm in corporate. I don't necessarily fit in corporate. And so that's the thing, like, what's your identity? A lot of people, to your point, John, like I see them get miserable because their identity is their role at work. And I'm like, people outside of work don't even know what I do for a living. It's not my identity, but like if that's what they want to be, great. But I think that's we'll post that book too, because that's, I think, a really cool thing to figure out.
Yep.
Like, what do you want to be? And there are some legit questions in there. How much does money mean to you? What do you want to be? Do you want work to be number one focus, or training or what? Like, you can't do it all. So I think that's super cool. And we'll put the links in so you can find John and follow him. I'm just, one of the things I'm most thankful for is, you are 6 years younger than me, which means you are never my age. That's one thing I'm thankful for. But I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I really
thanks,
love the opportunity to come on and hang out with you guys. It's always a pleasure. Anytime I've spent with Michael Seiler, other than the Ironman of 2009, any time other than the 10 hours of 2009 that I spent doing Ironman Louisville has been an absolute pleasure to do with it.
Was Michael with you for 10 hours?
No, I decided I wanted to get more value from my
your cost
experience.
Per hour lower.
Yeah, so I just went a little bit longer because I wanted to get more out of the day.
Yeah, I like it.
Actually, I guess
thanks so much, dude.
Yeah, no problem. I do want to say one last thing, actually. As bad as my race, or disappointed, I should say, as my race was, it all turned to happiness when he finished, because I got to there's photos of me and him after the race, and I couldn't be more smiles, because one, I think I was coaching you at the time.
That's true.
Really joyful. And two, I could just forget my race and enjoy the experience you had in the celebration you were having as finishing your first Ironman. And that was kind of, that was really magical. So
it was definitely fun to share that.
And that's the joy of the community. Right? That's the joy of the community. Right?
Yep.
That's really cool stuff.
Yeah, it is.
For sure.
All right. Thanks, man.